and welcome to The Art of Being Human. I've been doing a series of shows on bullying, and I'm going to continue with this today, and I'm going to start to kind of wrap it up. There are just so many people who don't understand how bad it is for children who are being bullied, and there are just so many people who feel like it's like a rite of passage for children. Children can expect to be bullied, children can expect to go through these things because that's a part of growing up. And so we have been lax as a nation and as communities and to protect children from that kind of thing, because it's a very, very serious thing. It hurts children. Sometimes they get it so badly they try to attempt suicide, and it's just something that should not be allowed. So I'm going to start up kind of a wrap-up session on bullying. It's a serious problem, largely ignored by most countries. However, Norway has been a leader in anti-bullying techniques, teaching children not to bully, making programs available so that they will cut down on bullying. Norway has been a leader in this. But many times, as I've said before, teachers and parents are unaware as to how bad it really is. A child may be bullied and the parent never know it. Or it goes on for months and years before the parent finally catches on to it. And the way that they catch on to it is that their child comes home and they've been beaten up, or their child even attempts suicide. And that's the first they've heard about the bullying. And teachers likewise, they don't necessarily know what's going on. They teach their classes, but they don't know what's going on in the playgrounds. The other thing is the internet is rife with bullying, and a lot of children get bullied over the internet on their emails and social networking pages. And unless parents check what children are doing online and check what children are receiving online by others, they may never know how bad the bullying is. But that something has to be done. This has to be stopped, and I'm glad to know that people who are in high social positions are beginning to take an interest in this and trying to do programs that will stop the bullying. So Norway has been a leader, and teachers and parents have to be aware of what's happening to their children and what's happening in school systems. How close are the children? What happens to them? Some children are bullied all day long, every day on the internet, and as a matter of fact, for them, it never stops. They get up in the morning and they can expect to be bullied all day long from either children themselves on the internet, what people say to them, and they're made fun of, and then people do things to them like trying to push their heads down into toilets, as I described last week, or mixing detergent in their milk and forcing them to drink it. I mean, this is insane. This is just insane. It's abuse and it can't be tolerated. So some children are bullied all day long and on the internet. And according to the research that I've read, 1/3 of 9 to 15-year-old girls are also sexually harassed and teased to the point where they no longer want to go to school. School should be a safe place for children to learn, and it should be a safe place for them to be. They should be able to bond with other children. They should be able to develop social skills, which are very important. They should be able to learn intellectual learning and coursework, and but at the same time, social skills, learning how to bond with other children, learning how to play with other children. These are not just nameless things that they do. These are important skills that they need to do for adulthood. A child that cannot play right, a child that cannot mix with other children, they will have very great problems when they get to be adults. And this needs to be avoided. So I'm just going to I'll put this down. Anti-bullying should be a high priority, and parents must be watchful and protective of a child and intervene to stop the bullying. Children by themselves are not strong enough to stop it, and there's no equal power base between a child and a molester. Molesting is, in a sense, bullying, but it may even be worse because there's more sexual content involved with it. The child cannot protect themselves. They're not strong enough to do it. They're not physically able to do it. And you've got to remember that their minds don't develop and grow completely until mid-20s. A child that is young does not have the mental capability of making choices, does not have the mental capability of protecting themselves. It has to be something that an adult steps in and does for them. A child's brain, even through teenage years, is not mature. They don't know how to handle things because they're not mature. The brain does not mature until about age 25. When you get to the mid-20s, then the brain is mature enough so that they can handle responsibilities and handle the way people treat them in a mature fashion. They can't do that when they're younger. They don't have the brain power to do it. So how do the parents know, and how do they know that their children are being bullied? Well, if they come home and their clothes are torn, the books are torn, they're bruised, you know, they've obviously been molested in some kind of way, then you start to ask questions. If your child comes home and they're not feeling well and they've got a black eye and they go to their room and they just sulk and they sit there and they don't do anything, then you know something's going on. And you have to be, as a parent, very, very vigilant in terms of what's happening to your child. You have to ask questions. You have to know what's going on. And you have to open the lines of communication for that to occur, because the child themselves may not be able to do that. A child does not know how to open up communications and say to their parents, I'm being bullied. For one thing, they're probably not going to be believed, or the parent's going to say, well, that goes along with childhood, you know, just kind of toughen up and it'll be all right. But the problem is it won't be all right. It's only going to add to the insecurity of children. It's only going to add to the pain that they're already experiencing. It's going to interfere with the child's trust of the parent. You know, the parent has to be the one that they can be free to go to with any kind of a problem, and the parent needs to step in and respond, but in a non-punitive way, not blaming the child, not letting the child know that they're weak. Of course they're weak, they're children. You don't expect them to be strong. They can't be, because their brains aren't developed to the point where they can be strong. So you are the ones who have to step in and help out as parents. And teachers can't do it all. Teachers are so busy doing what they have to do in the classroom and preparing for classes, they can't be aware of everything that happens outside of the classroom, in the yard where the child plays, or waiting for buses and that kind of thing. So there has to be a way of monitoring what's going on the outside of classes as well as in the classroom, to help children not to suffer what's going on, not to be victims of bullying. Now, parents have to know how to talk to children about bullying, and how to do it without blame, without judgment, without anger. If you're being bullied, if I had a child, I would say, if somebody's doing something to you and it makes you uncomfortable, I want to know about it. I want to know what's going on. And you can tell me, and I'm not going to get angry about it. I'm not going to blame you. I just want to know what it is so I can help out. And a child may be afraid to have a parent help out, because they're afraid that if the parent steps in, that they may become the victims of even worse bullying, because the bullies will be angry at them. So a child is in a real quandary here. And the quandary is, do I say something and get it worse? Or do I say something and have my parents even blame me? Or do I just keep it to myself and put up with it and fight it where I can? And usually that means by not fighting it at all. So it's up to the parents to open those lines of communication and let them know that you will be very careful and discreet in terms of what you say, but you will take action and defend them, because that's what parents are for. Children should be able to go to their parents with anything, and that's what parents are for. So you need to open up those lines of communication. You know, it is a problem, and there is a quandary with children, because they're not mature enough to know how to use their brains in an effective way, because the brains aren't mature. And yet at the same time, they have to know things to do, how to do, what to do, why to do it. And if they themselves are bullies, you need to deal with them, and they still don't have the brain power of an adult if they're a child, but you still have to deal with them and teach them. If a child doesn't know the difference between bullying and not bullying, and they think everybody does it and therefore it's okay, then you have to step in as a parent and teach them, we don't bully, we don't allow it, we don't do it, and teach them the value of human life. We have to be taught the value of human life, and that can only come by a parent being diligent and being careful. At the same time, recognizing the fact that their child is not mature. Their child, if they're in elementary school, early high school, they're not going to be mature until their mid-20s in terms of brain development. So you have to balance off the fact that a child cannot be physically mature until mid-20s, especially in terms of brain power. Yet at the same time, you have to teach them what to do and what not to do, and you have to teach them the value of other people. Yes, people are worth something. Yes, people are valuable. It doesn't matter what kind of a race they're from, or what their social part is, or how rich their parents are. You have to teach them the value of human beings and treating them right, even as you understand that they can't pick up some concepts because they're too young to do it. You know, and a child, they can respond to what you teach them, even though they don't fully understand what's going on and can't pick up things mentally when their brain is not able to do it. But you can still teach them and they can respond to that. So you have to keep the lines of communication open. How do the victims feel? Well, they feel very embarrassed. They feel like they are of less worth. They feel that they are less supported. They have a sense of false guilt, and that is they believe that all of the bullying is their fault. And they fear being punished, and they fear revenge. Now, the false guilt is important, and I want to discuss that for a minute. False guilt is when you believe that you're to blame for something that you're not to blame for. And a lot of people have false guilt. If they've gone through trauma as a child, if they've been molested as a child, they tend to blame themselves, saying, well, you know, it's my fault, I didn't stop it. But the truth of the matter is the power base, a lot of these things are occurring as crimes of power. Power of one person against another person. Power of one group against another group. And there's no way that a young child or even an older child or young adult can fight against the power that other people and other groups have against them. I can remember when I was working kind of in the state legislature. I wasn't ever a state legislator, but we were trying to pass a fair and equitable counseling law so that people who were counseling had the right education and training. But that kind of went awry, and there were people who were just demanding that certain bills be passed that would not be healthy for people. And I can remember going in, and they wanted me to vote against a certain law, and I was for it, or maybe it was vice versa. It was a long time ago, I don't remember. But I remember being surrounded and by people, a group of people just surrounding me in a circle, and I was in the middle of the circle, just demanding that I vote a certain way. I don't remember which way I was intending to vote. I don't remember what that particular issue was, but I know it was in reference to a counseling licensure bill, and they were trying to convince me to vote a certain way, and they just put me in a circle and surrounded me, and there must have been 20 or 30 people. And I still had to stand up and say, I won't, or maybe it was I will, I don't remember, but I will only vote the way that my conscience dictates that I vote, because I feel very strongly about this. And they were just harassing me and calling me names. And one person got up to testify and said, don't pay any attention, and she named me by name. This is a person who thinks she's a counsel. Well, I had 3 college degrees in it. And I had internships, and I was a college professor, and there's no reason why I couldn't counsel. I fulfilled all of the requirements for that. But she said, don't pay any attention to this person. And she called me basically a nutcase. That wasn't the word that she used, but that's what she clearly meant. Don't pay any attention to this person. This person is not qualified to be a counselor. And she named me by name in front of all of the state legislatures. And as you you know, New Hampshire has the biggest legislature in the country. There's over 400 people, I believe, in it. It's just an amazing amount of people. And people were trying to get her to stop talking. They were just trying to shush her, and they put their fingers up to their mouths, because I could have sued her for defamation of character. I really could have sued her. Now, I never did. And the law passed the way that I wanted to anyway, but there was a considerable amount of harassment involved in getting me to vote the way they wanted me to vote. And I didn't want to vote that way. I didn't think it was good. And so I voted the way I wanted to. But they practically pounded me verbally to try to get me to do it. And I didn't have anywhere to turn. I was, at that point, the only person standing there. But I wouldn't let down on what my belief system was, and I wouldn't let down on what I wanted to do, because what I felt was important. It was important for me to vote the way that my conscience dictated that I voted, and I did vote that way. Well, in the end, I guess it all turned out all right, but we spent several years fighting with various groups because they wanted certain things in a council licensure law that basically would have cut out a lot of qualified counsels. They would not have been able to have counsel in the bill that they wanted. So we just kept arguing and fighting over it, and we had a group of people. We hired a lobbyist and all of that. So at any rate, I don't want to go on with that, but you see how you can get harassed if you believe a certain way and you think that what you're believing is right. You can really get harassed over that. And you have to be strong enough to fight that off and just maintain what you believe is true and just follow the dictates of your conscience. But how do you show that to children? Children who aren't adult, children who don't have full brain development. You have to teach them, you have to support them, you have to let them know that you're in their corner, and you have to validate what they say. Believe when they tell you they're being injured or harassed. Believe them. They're not going to lie about it. Step in on their behalf. If an adult has trouble with it and they're fully mature, think of how much more difficult it is for a child. So bullying should never be tolerated, and bullies need to be treated just as the people who are being bullied need to be treated, because a lot of bullies were bullies because they were bullied themselves. It's like you can't control violence by being more violent against those who are violent. It only perpetuates itself in a nasty cycle, and it just increases problems. You have to have another way of dealing with it. You have to teach students, but you've got to support them. They've got to feel free to tell you how they feel. Even the bullies have to be free to tell you how they feel. And you've got to remember, a bully does not want to give up bullying, and the reason they don't is they're getting some kind of reward from it. When behavior persists, and even if it's undesirable behavior, the person who is doing it is getting something from it that's helping them to feel better about themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't continue it. When a person has a certain type of behavior, and maybe it should stop, but it doesn't stop, it continues as long as the person doing that behavior is getting something from it, usually something in terms of self-esteem or feeling strong. And a lot of bullies have a lot of admirers, because children who are not strong kind of flock to them because they admire them. But then the bullies don't give it up. They just feed on it. And as a result of that, they continue being bullies. That has to be treated. That is a problem, because most of those bullies will end up in court, and most of them may end up in jail for offenses, sometimes very serious offenses. So bullying should not be allowed, and the bullies have to be treated, and the bullies should be taken out of the school and educated maybe in a different environment. That might be one thing that can happen that will help to stop the process. Something has to stop the cycle. When something starts and it's not good and it gets going, it just follows a cycle, and the cycle repeats itself, and the cycle doesn't end. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just keeps going and going and going and going. And it gets passed down to children, it gets passed down to grandchildren, that same kind of behavior. Somebody has to step up and stop the cycle. People have to step up and stop the cycle with educational programs, with special classes, removing bullies from school if that's necessary, and it might be necessary, and I'm not saying permanently, on a temporary basis until they can get treated and they can think of people in a different kind of light. And at the same time, children who are being bullied need to be treated for that. They need to be watched and helped to grow and heal from it. So I'm going to stop it here because we're about done with this. And the next time we meet, I'm going to talk about attachments and attachment disorders. All of this is related and is important for you to know. We do attach to people. We do attach to things. We do attach to philosophies. This does have a relationship to bullying because we can attach ourselves to the wrong things as well as the right things. And some people can't attach, and that's a part of bullying behavior as well. So we will continue with this next time. Please join me then.